It's Platt, and today we try an ancient ale. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. Alright, so the particular beer we have today is the Midas Touch. It comes to us from Dogfish Head Brewing. The beer itself has a very interesting story, but so does the brewery, and we'll start with the brewery. Dogfish Head was founded in 1995 by a gentleman named Sam Calagione. Sam got the name Dogfish Head because where he grew up in Maine was called Dogfish Head, Maine. So it's a weird name, and a lot of people hypothesize different meanings to it, but it's just simply the name of his hometown in Maine. Dogfish Head Brewing has a simple slogan or a theme. They produce off-centered ale for off-centered people, and I think it perfectly describes the company. Sam has always kind of pushed the envelope when it comes to brewing. I would say of Dogfish Head beers and probably even the restaurant and the pubs itself, probably not a spot for your Miller Lite drinkers because Sam doesn't produce kind of generic beers. A lot of breweries, will produce, all right, we're going to produce a pale ale, we'll produce an IPA, we'll produce a stout, or whatever. Well, that's not Sam. He wants to produce things that don't fit into a certain box or don't fit into a certain style. And that's just been his style, and it's done the brewery quite well. Dogfish Head's been one of the fastest growing breweries in America for quite a while now. 15 years ago, they were expandedly wrapping at a period between 2003 and 2006. They grew over 400%. Really been a remarkable success story, and again, it's based off Sam's passion to create these unusual beers. Another thing that really helped Dogfish Head is the exposure they were able to get. They were featured on a TV show called Brewmasters, where you kind of got to see behind the scenes on how Sam came up with some of these unique beers that they make. They were also in a documentary called Beer Wars, which is about the craft brewing explosion of 10 to 15 years ago. And again, he was featured on that, and it's that kind of notoriety that really can help a brewery. Also, it helps that Sam's a likable enough guy, got a good personality, and also makes really cool beer. The company itself is based in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. That's where the original brew pub's located. They also now have their production facility there too. Dogfish Head has also licensed out 3 Dogfish Head ale houses that are located in Maryland and Virginia, and I believe there's more of those to come. Probably the biggest news with Dogfish Head in the last couple of years or so has been their agreement to merge with the Boston Beer Company. I know this brought a lot of hesitation to some of the true hardcore craft beer people. A lot of them look up to Sam, but then kind of look down at Boston Beer Companies. The Boston Beer Company, i.e. Samuel Adams, has kind of a mixed reputation with the craft beer community. A lot of people kind of look down at the fact that it started off as a contract brewery. There was no original Sam Adams Brewing. Also, too, because they've become so large now, they've kind of left the craft beer world. A lot of people view them as big beer. I personally think the merger's great because I think Jim Koch has always been passionate about the beer. The reality was, if there weren't guys like Jim Koch back in the day, there wouldn't be the craft beer movement we have today. Also, too, I think Sam is so passionate about what he does. I think he'll be a perfect fit with the company. And the plan is to eventually have Sam take over running the company from Jim eventually, and Sam, in this agreement, Dogfish Head become a big stockholder into the Boston Beer Company, so he'll play an important role in the Boston Beer Company too. I just think it's a great merger between two guys who are really passionate about beer and also are successful at making beer. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, before we try the Midas Touch, though, let's check out the stats. Alright, the beer here is called Midas Touch. A little background to it. It's part of Dogfish Head's Ancient Ale series. In the series, they go back with help from archaeologists and different historians and kind of reverse engineer or recreate ancient alcoholic beverage recipes or beer recipes from the past. They've done brews from China, Ethiopia. This particular one dates back to Turkey. What they've done was archaeologists had found ancient drinking vessels, plates, bowls from what they think is King Midas' tomb. This was discovered in Turkey around the 1950s. And at the time they didn't have the technology, but they later did the ability to take some of these plates, take samples off the plates, and figure out, do chemical analysis on what was in the vessel, what was actually in there, and what was the recipe of whatever prepared is in there. This was drinking vessels. They were able to reverse engineer an ancient ale recipe. For Midas Touch, I believe it's honey-based with muscat grapes and saffron. But back in the day, they used all kinds of different recipes. They figured this recipe is over 3,000 years old, or roughly 3,000 years old. Beer's been brewed for thousands of years. Now, what you're going to notice that's different about this brew and some of the ancient brews compared to modern-day brews is the use of hops. Hops have only been around for a few hundred years. Before that, people used all kinds of things to spice beer. Spruce tips, tree bark, licorice, you name it. And part of the reason why hops came about was because the first regulators decided the way they would tax beer is through the use of the spices. You didn't want to tax barley that was made to use beer, because barley was also used to make bread and other things, and you would probably get a little too much pushback on that, but taxing things like spruce tips or whatever really didn't anger people too much, so that's how they were able to originally regulate beer. Well, to get around that, people then started using hops because no one was using hops for beer, and that's kind of how hops came about as far as being used for beer, was to avoid those taxes. But the original brews had all different kind of things in there, and that's one of the neat things about this Ancient Ale series, is you get to try what quote-unquote was beer thousands of years ago. And again, one of the things that wasn't in it was hops at the time. With that being said, though, let's give the Midas Touch a try. Alright. Well, plenty of as bird will tell you, plenty of carbonation. Sorry about the bird. Plenty of carbonation. This looks like a slightly darker blonde ale. It's still fairly clean. Kind of a honeyed nose. Let's give her a taste. Oh, that's unique. Definitely get plenty of the honey. Yeah, the aftertaste's different. Again, there appears to be just no hops in this, so it's throwing you off on the aroma. It's still balanced. This is a slightly sweet beer, but not in a malty sense. Finish-wise, medium, maybe medium minus. Not a long finish here. To me, the honey's probably the most predominant thing on this. Very drinkable. It's 9% alcohol, so it's a little stronger, but at 9% I don't get the alcohol burn or whatever. Body-wise, is medium. Like I said, medium minus on the finish. This is quite drinkable, quite enjoyable. It's a hot day in Las Vegas right now, but it's still light enough. Also, too, there's enough carbonation, effervescence. This still makes it a fairly drinkable beer. It's definitely unique. And I will say this, as the bird cuts in again, I will say this. This is something I think maybe the more adventurous Miller Lite drinker might try. It's not offensive with any kind of the spice. Like I said, it's more of a sweet beer to it, which I think, the mass-produced beer drinker probably would be more open to than, let's say, the other extreme, a really hoppy, really bitter beer. I think this one's a little more approachable, but still unique, still different, and in about a way, something I could see them drinking in the past, because up until recently, sweetness was really highly valued, because you just, thousands of years ago, things like honey and sugar were quite revered. They weren't as prevalent as they are now. And so to enjoy a sweet brew probably was a big thing back then. And so I can see where, if you were a king or someone of certain social level, you would enjoy a sweeter drink. So I can see this being a nice celebratory brew. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video, because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Well, until next time, bottoms up.